My name is Alex Vance, and I built Apex Innovations from an old laptop in a dusty garage. I was 30 years old, and that Sunday dinner in Austin should have been a celebration. Instead, it was where my life splintered. My father, General Robert Vance, stood at the head of our mahogany dining table, a man forged in the crucible of military command, 28 years of service etched into his posture. Even retired, his word was law. My mother, Eleanor, sat beside him, a portrait of quiet dignity, meticulously slicing her pot roast. And then there was my younger brother, Ryan, lounging in his chair, fingers dancing across his phone, oblivious, as always, to the maelstrom he brewed. Ryan has real potential, Dad boomed, his voice echoing off the high ceilings. I slowly set down my fork. The clink against the ceramic plate sounded like a gunshot in the sudden quiet. My answer is no, I stated, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. The grandfather clock in the hall began its deliberate tick-tock, counting the seconds of an impending storm. Dad's jaw clenched, a familiar sign. Ryan finally looked up, a sly glint in his eyes, waiting to see if I'd buckle. 5 years. 5 grueling years since I'd coded Apex Innovations into existence. It began with vulnerability assessments for local businesses, then soared into cutting-edge cybersecurity solutions for government agencies and Fortune 100 companies. I hadn't asked my family for a dime. Not through college, when ramen was my gourmet meal. Not when I'd maxed out every credit card to secure server space. Not even when I skipped meals for 6 months to land my first major contract. Ryan, on the other hand, was a black hole for capital. Electric scooter startups, crypto schemes, a virtual reality travel app that never saw the light of day. This is different. Ryan finally chimed in, his tone oozing false humility. The quantum computing market is about to explode. I'd heard variations of this speech 4 times in 3 years. Different buzzwords, same empty promise. I'm not selling my company to fund another one of your experiments, I said, my voice hardening. Dad's face flushed crimson. That company exists because of the values we instilled in you. Family didn't help me build it, I retorted, the words a bitter taste on my tongue. Boy, I was 30 years old. I employed 20 people. I held multi-million-dollar contracts with the Texas Department of Technology and 3 major tech corporations. But in this house, under his gaze, I was still the child, the obedient soldier. Mom cleared her throat, a soft, anxious sound. There's nothing to discuss, Mom. Dad leaned forward, his knuckles white against the dark wood. I should have left then. Should have seen the warning in his narrowed eyes, the barely controlled rage simmering beneath his polished facade. Instead, I stayed, foolishly clinging to the hope that a family dinner might still be salvaged. I was tragically wrong. Growing up, Dad ran our home like a military base. Chores had deadlines. Grades had consequences. Ryan and I learned early that questioning orders earned punishment detail. But Ryan was different. Charming, effortlessly confident. He always had a way of talking himself out of trouble. Dad bought every excuse. I was the opposite. Quiet, methodical, terrified to disappoint. I graduated summa cum laude from the University of Texas with a computer science degree, spending my summers in scorching server rooms while Ryan backpacked through Europe on Dad's credit card. After college, I moved into a cramped downtown Austin apartment and started freelancing. Ryan moved back home, announcing his new food delivery startup. Apex Innovations started by accident. A client system was breached during my security audit. Instead of just identifying vulnerabilities, I built custom AI-driven monitoring software to prevent future attacks. Word spread, more contracts followed. Within 2 years, I'd outgrown my apartment and leased prime office space near the university. Ryan's food delivery app? 6 months. Then came the drone delivery service that never got off the ground. Then cryptocurrency trading that lost $50,000 in 3 weeks. Each failure was met with sympathy and encouragement. Meanwhile, I hired my first employees, landed state contracts, and started getting featured in Austin Tech Weekly. Dad never mentioned those articles. The first real warning sign flashed last Christmas. Ryan cornered me after dinner, his breath reeking of expensive bourbon. He rambled about his latest idea, quantum AI software for data analytics. He needed $500,000 for development, a prototype in 6 months. "Just think about it, bro," he'd slurred. I told him I'd consider it. Privately, I'd already decided. Ryan's track record was a cratered landscape of broken promises. Then came the phone calls. Dad, casually asking about Apex Innovations' valuation. Innocent questions that felt like reconnaissance missions. 2 weeks ago, Ryan showed up at my office unannounced. "You're sitting on millions, Alex," he'd sneered, lounging in my executive chair. "I'm family." When I patiently explained that Apex's value was tied up in long-term contracts, cutting-edge equipment, and the salaries of brilliant engineers, he accused me of making excuses. "Dad's right," Ryan said as he left, his voice dripping with contempt. That should have been my final, blaring alarm. Family loyalty was becoming a weapon, and I was the target. The slap cracked through the dining room like a thunderclap. I sat there, stunned, tasting the coppery tang of blood from my split lip, while Dad stood over me, his hand still raised, trembling slightly. Mom gasped, her fork clattering to the floor. Ryan didn't move, didn't speak, just watched, a flicker of cold amusement in his eyes. "You'll regret this, boy," Dad hissed, his voice low and menacing. The physical pain wasn't what shocked me. It was the chilling calculation in his eyes. He'd hit me to make a point, to reassert control, to remind me who was supposed to be in charge. This wasn't anger. This was strategy. I wiped my mouth with my napkin, folded it neatly, and slowly stood up. My voice, though quiet, cut through the tension like a razor. Mom's voice was a desperate whisper, but I was already walking toward the door. Ryan called after me, his tone mocking. I drove home in silence, the throbbing in my jaw a dull drumbeat. But the physical pain was nothing compared to the crystal clarity settling in my mind. This wasn't about Ryan's startup. This wasn't about family loyalty. This was about power, control, and the arrogant assumption that I owed them something simply because we shared blood. Back in my minimalist Austin apartment, I sat at my kitchen table and opened my laptop, the same laptop where I'd written Apex Innovations' first lines of code 5 years ago. I'd built something real, something valuable, something truly mine. And they wanted to take it away, to fund another one of Ryan's endless fantasies. I made 3 phone calls that night. First, to my attorney, instructing him to update my emergency contacts and beneficiary information, making it clear my family was to be excluded. Second, to my accountant, David Chen, moving every penny of my personal savings to a new bank account, solely in my name. Third, to my business partner, Ben Carter, asking him to schedule an urgent meeting about our growth strategy. I didn't sleep. Instead, I spent hours poring over old emails, searching for patterns I'd missed. Dad asking about Apex Innovations client contracts. Mom subtly inquiring about my retirement plans. Ryan's sudden interest in cybersecurity market valuations. They'd been planning this for months. The Sunday dinner wasn't spontaneous. It was an ambush, carefully orchestrated to back me into a corner. Dad's military training at its finest. Control the environment, eliminate escape routes, apply overwhelming pressure. But they'd made one critical mistake. They assumed I was still the kid who followed orders without question. They didn't understand that building Apex Innovations had changed me. Every failed pitch, every brutal rejection, every sleepless night debugging complex code had taught me to think strategically, to plan for contingencies, to protect what truly mattered. The next morning, I called Ben back. I asked, "The one we turned down 6 months ago, 42 million?" I touched my still swollen lip, remembering Ryan's smirk, Mom's pained silence, Dad's raised hand. Alex, that's a huge decision. 3 days after the dinner, Dad showed up at my office. I was reviewing security protocols with my lead developer when my assistant knocked on the door. "General Vance is here to see you," she whispered, clearly intimidated. Dad walked in, resplendent in his dress uniform from some veterans event, medals gleaming under the fluorescent lights. Ben excused himself, a polite nod of discomfort. "That's quite an operation you've got here, Alex," Dad said, his eyes sweeping over the humming servers, the dual monitors on each desk, the framed patents on the walls. Impressive. I didn't offer him a seat. He stepped closer, his voice softening into what I recognized as his negotiation tone. I was out of line Sunday night. I waited. "But my point stands," he continued, his voice regaining its steel. "Ryan's idea has merit. Quantum AI is the future. With your technical background and his vision, you could build something revolutionary. By selling Apex Innovations. By thinking bigger. Family businesses are generational wealth. Look at the Waltons. The Kochs." Dad had done his homework. He'd researched Apex Innovations contracts, estimated our revenue, probably even pulled my credit report through one of his military contacts. This wasn't a casual visit. This was reconnaissance. "I've already given you my answer," I said, my voice flat. His demeanor shifted instantly. The apologetic father vanished, replaced by the colonel who'd spent 3 decades getting his way through intimidation. "Your mother's medical bills are getting expensive," he said, his gaze unwavering. "Diabetes medication, physical therapy for her hip. It's reality. Family takes care of family." The manipulation was flawless. Make me the villain for protecting my business. Make Ryan the victim who deserved support. Make Mom's health my responsibility to solve, I asked, my voice barely a whisper. 500,000. Ryan's already found investors willing to match whatever we contribute. It's not charity, Alex. Dad straightened his uniform jacket, his gaze cold. After he left, I called Mom directly. She answered on the first ring, her voice tight with anxiety. "Alex, honey, I'm so sorry about Sunday." Silence. She laughed nervously. "You know how he exaggerates." "How expensive, Mom?" "Honey, please don't worry about this." But I could hear the strain in her voice, the desperate plea for me to let it go. Either she was lying to protect me, or Dad was lying to manipulate me. Both options fueled a cold fury inside me. That evening, Ryan texted me. "Dad told me about your conversation. I know this is awkward, but I really think we could make something special together. I stared at the message for 10 minutes before responding. His reply came immediately. Fine. There it was, the real threat. Not physical violence this time, but emotional blackmail disguised as family obligation. They'd weaponized Mom's health, Ryan's future, and my own lingering guilt to force a decision I'd already made. I deleted Ryan's number from my phone. I blocked Dad's calls, but the damage was done. They'd shown me exactly how far they were willing to go to get what they wanted. The question was, how far was I willing to go to stop them? On a Thursday morning. Alex, we need to talk, Marcus said. His voice clipped. I was halfway through my coffee when the words hit me. Professional ones. They knew exactly which forms to request, which databases to search. I sat down hard. That's the problem. They used proper channels, had legitimate documentation, but something felt off. David had been handling my book since Apex Innovation's second year. A former IRS auditor, paranoid about privacy, the kind of guy who spotted irregularities from 3 states away. If he was worried, I should be terrified. His office smelled like stale coffee and anxiety. David spread documents across his desk like evidence at a crime scene. Here's what happened, he said. Tuesday afternoon, someone contacted the Texas Secretary of State office requesting copies of Apex Innovations Incorporation papers. Wednesday morning, they pulled your tax filings from the county assessor. If you know the right people and file the right paperwork, yes. Most of this information is technically public record. I studied the request forms. Professional letterhead, official language, signatures from people I'd never heard of. But the requesting organization made my blood run cold. Vance Solutions Group. Ryan doesn't have a consulting company, I said, my voice barely a whisper. He does now, incorporated Monday morning. Listed address? The timeline was perfect. Sunday dinner, Monday incorporation, Tuesday through Thursday, systematic information gathering. Ryan hadn't come up with this plan overnight. He'd been preparing for weeks, maybe months. There's more, David said, his face grave. Someone contacted 3 of your major clients yesterday, claiming they were conducting a routine security audit on your behalf. Texas Department of Technology, Orion Dynamics, and Phoenix Logistics Solutions. My hands started shaking. Those 3 contracts represented 60% of Apex Innovations' revenue. If clients lost confidence in our security practices, we'd be finished within months. That Apex Innovations doesn't conduct third-party audits without written authorization. But Alex, the damage might already be done. I pulled out my phone and called Ben. He answered immediately. We need to meet, I said, my voice tight. Ben arrived at David's office within 20 minutes, his face grim. I explained the situation while he took notes, occasionally swearing under his breath. This is industrial sabotage, he said finally. And tell them what? That my brother filed some paperwork and made some phone calls? David cleared his throat. There's one more thing. I got a call this morning from someone claiming to represent potential investors interested in acquiring Apex Innovations, information they couldn't have without inside access. Ben added, his eyes narrowed. Or a family member who knew exactly where to look, I finished. The room went quiet. Outside, Austin's bustling tech district hummed with normal activity. People going to work, attending meetings, building careers. Inside, I was learning that my own family had declared war on everything I'd built. Ben asked, his voice gentle. I thought about Ryan's smirk. Dad's calculated violence. Mom's nervous laughter about medical bills that might not even exist. I want to disappear, I said. The words a raw whisper. The Quantum Nexus Corp. Acquisition offer was still on the table. I called their chief executive officer Friday morning and explained that circumstances had changed. Within 6 hours, I was sitting in a sleek conference room in downtown Austin, reviewing terms with Sofia Ramirez, Quantum Nexus's lead counsel, a sharp, formidable woman. 42 million cash deal, 30-day close, she stated. But we need exclusive negotiating rights immediately. That works for me, I said. She glanced at Ben, who'd been unusually quiet during the meeting. We discussed it. That was partially true. Ben understood the situation, but he still thought I was overreacting. Maybe we should try legal action first, he'd suggested earlier. I'd replied, signing the exclusivity agreement. I wondered if he was right. But Ryan's systematic assault on our client relationships had accelerated my timeline. Every day we waited was another opportunity for him to poison potential buyers against us. One more thing, Sofia said. Quantum Nexus requires complete confidentiality until the deal closes. The paperwork took 3 hours. Due diligence would require another week. But by Saturday morning, I had a binding letter of intent and a timeline that would have me out of Austin before Ryan realized what was happening. Step 1. Relocate immediately. I'd already researched Sedona, Arizona. Close enough to major tech centers, far enough from Texas that surprise visits would be impossible. I could run Apex Innovations remotely during the transition period. Step 2. Reroute all communication. Every business call, every email, every contract negotiation would go through my attorney. No direct contact with family members. No opportunities for emotional manipulation. Step 3. Execute the sale and disappear. Sunday afternoon, I started packing. 5 years of my life in Austin fit into 4 boxes and 2 suitcases. I'd never accumulated much stuff. Never bought furniture worth keeping. Never put down roots that couldn't be pulled up overnight. My phone buzzed constantly. Mom texting about Sunday dinner plans. Ryan sending me articles about quantum AI startups that had sold for millions. I ignored them all. Monday morning, I met with my key employees individually. I couldn't explain the sale yet, but I could prepare them for the transition. Whatever happens in the next few weeks, your jobs are secure, I told each of them, looking them in the eye. Asked Sarah, my lead security analyst, her brow furrowed with concern. You seem... Tuesday, Ryan showed up at my apartment building. I watched from my window as he argued with the security guard, demanding access to my floor. After 20 minutes, he left a handwritten note with the doorman. The note said, I know you're mad, but this isn't just about us anymore. Dad's getting desperate. I threw it away without finishing it. Wednesday, David called with news that Vance Solutions Group had filed paperwork requesting copies of Apex Innovations' client contracts from the state archives. They're not backing down, he said. Neither am I replied. Thursday morning, Sofia called with the final contract terms. Friday, you sign the sale agreement. Monday, Quantum Nexus announces the acquisition. Ben asked me Thursday evening. I looked around my empty apartment, the stark walls, the echo of my own breath. I thought about Ryan's entitled demands, Dad's violent control tactics, the suffocating grip of their expectations. Mauperso, I signed the sale agreement. $42 million transferred to my account within 4 hours. Apex Innovations, the company I'd built from nothing, officially belonged to Quantum Nexus Corp. My employees kept their jobs. My clients kept their contracts. And I kept my freedom. I didn't announce it. Didn't post on social media. Didn't send farewell emails. I just signed the papers, shook hands with Sophia, and walked out of the conference room as a free man. I was at Austin Bergstrom International Airport with a one-way ticket to Phoenix, Arizona. My phone had been buzzing all day with calls from Dad and Ryan, but I'd already switched carriers and changed my number. The first they'd hear about the sale would be Monday morning, when Quantum Nexus published the acquisition announcement in the business journals. By then, I'd be across the continent, legally protected by non-disclosure agreements and physically protected by 1,000 miles. From the departure gate, I sent one final email to my parents' address. Apex Innovations has been sold. I'm relocating permanently. Do not attempt to contact me through business channels or legal representatives. This decision is final. Exactly 1 hour before Quantum Nexus's press release. Then, I deleted the email account, wiped my phone, and boarded the plane. Sedona, Arizona, turned out to be exactly what I needed. I bought a small house overlooking the Red Rock formations, close enough to downtown for coffee shops and restaurants, far enough from main roads for genuine quiet. For the first time in years, I woke up without checking my phone for crisis messages or client emergencies. The Quantum Nexus acquisition had gone smoothly. My former employees sent occasional updates through Ben, who'd stayed on as a regional manager. Apex Innovations was thriving under new ownership, expanding into government contracts I'd never had the resources to pursue. I started freelance consulting, taking on projects that genuinely interested me, rather than ones that just paid the bills. No schedules, no employees, no family drama, just clean code and complicated problems. 6 months later, Ben visited during a business trip to Phoenix. Over dinner, he mentioned that Ryan's quantum AI startup had folded after 3 months. Investors pulled out when they couldn't verify his technical claims, Ben said, stirring his iced tea. I asked, my voice flat. Your father tried calling my office twice, demanding information about your whereabouts. I nodded, ordering another beer. The information felt distant, like hearing about strangers. A year later, I received a single forwarded email through my attorney. Mom asking if I was safe and healthy. No mentions of Ryan's failures. No regrets from Dad. No requests for reconciliation or explanations. I didn't reply. Some bridges, once burned, stay burned. The difference is choosing who strikes the match. These days, I wake up when I want, work on projects that matter, and answer only to myself. The view from my kitchen window shows towering red rocks and a vast, open sky, instead of traffic and obligations. Walking away from family had seemed impossible, until it became necessary. Looking back, it's clear that my journey wasn't just about building a tech company. It was about building myself. For years, I allowed my family's expectations, their definition of loyalty, to dictate my path. I let their manipulative tactics and the suffocating weight of their demands cloud my judgment. But the moment I truly understood that their actions were rooted in control, not love, everything shifted. The biggest lesson? Your self-worth is not tied to someone else's approval, especially family. I spent years trying to earn my father's praise, to prove myself, to be the good son who always complied. But that path led only to resentment and ultimately abuse. Understanding that I was valuable, independent of their validation, was the first step towards true freedom. Second, boundaries are not selfish. They are essential for self-preservation. When you draw a line, especially with family, prepare for resistance. They will test it, call you names, try to guilt-trip you. But holding firm is crucial. My family saw my success as something they were entitled to, a resource to be exploited. Establishing clear, non-negotiable boundaries, even if it meant cutting ties, was the only way to protect what I had painstakingly built, both professionally and personally. Third, true strength often lies in letting go. I thought I had to fight to keep Apex Innovations. But the most powerful move I made was realizing that the fight itself was draining me, distracting me from my real purpose. Selling the company wasn't a defeat. It was a strategic retreat, a way to reclaim my peace and redirect my energy. Sometimes, walking away is the strongest action you can take. It's not about giving up. It's about choosing your battles and investing in your own well-being. Finally, your peace is paramount. The quiet life I found in Sedona, away from the constant drama and demands, isn't just a physical location. It's a state of mind. It's the freedom to pursue projects that ignite my passion, to wake up without dread, and to answer only to my own conscience. Don't underestimate the corrosive effect of toxic relationships, no matter who they are with. You have the power to create a life where you feel safe, valued, and genuinely happy. My story isn't unique. Many of you might be facing similar struggles with family expectations, control, or a feeling of being trapped. Remember, your life is yours to define. You are allowed to prioritize your mental health, your dreams, and your peace. It might be incredibly difficult, but the liberation on the other side is worth every painful step. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever felt the weight of unspoken expectations or the sting of betrayal, I encourage you to like this video to show your support. Subscribe to this channel for more stories of resilience and overcoming adversity. Share this story with anyone who needs to hear it. And leave a comment below with your own thoughts or experiences. Let's build a community where we empower each other to choose peace.